Are we in it?
Nope.
I saw we were in
Georgia,
like
Texas, LSU, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Alabama, Missouri, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt. I saw our FPI is 23.
yeah, I saw we were like in the power index or whatever it's called. All right, we're live. It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to go live Friday night, but my hands were too cold and not enough people were joining. I was like, "Yep, I'm So how was while we're waiting on a couple people to join, how was Beetlejuice last night?
It was good. I mean, for redoing a movie that was made, or not redoing, but doing a second part, you never know what you're going to get with those. But I thought it was good. They had a lot of callbacks that were timely, and just a good story for what they were doing.
I don't know, man. It's just Tim Burton just not a big fan of his movies.
They're different.
Like, I mean, I knew at some point I've watched Beetlejuice, but I've never, like, in my adult life, I don't think within like 5 years or however long I've been watching those movies based off your list, I haven't watched it.
I could be wrong about this, but I want to say that Michael Keaton did Batman and Beetlejuice in the same year.
Probably because I mean they're both Tim Burton movies. Let's see when Beetlejuice was. Beetlejuice 89 because that's when Batman was
88. So Beetlejuice. So it must have been.
So he did Beetlejuice first and then Batman.
March 30th of 88.
Yeah, Batman was 1989, and then he did Batman Returns in 92. All right, we had a couple. There it is. All right, let's go ahead and hop on. Welcome back to another live edition of Two Guys Talking Sports. Week 8 has come and gone in the college football world. Steven, if I know we differ probably on our opinions on South Carolina football, but honestly, if you ask me, looking at the schedule before the season begins, that we're 4-3 heading into our second bye week, I think I'd be pleased with it. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the schedule coming in, we knew that getting to this bye, that was going to be like the gauntlet of our schedule between LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, and really what people thought Kentucky was at the beginning of the year as well. I would have said that we would probably been sitting here with 2 wins. So to have 4 and really, like I said, you're looking towards, not that it's easy, but you got a more favorable schedule, I would say.
And it's at
even
home.
even though you're most likely going to be facing 3 top 25 opponents in a row. Now with them, it's looking like Vanderbilt might be ranked this week. Now, whether or not they stay ranked after, I think that they play. They got Texas. Yeah. So, whether or not they stay ranked, you're still going to have a very good Vanderbilt team. So,
they also struggled against Ball State last night.
Yeah. For where we are, I think that we're head and shoulders above what I thought we were going to be coming into this season. And we've said that all year. Really and truly, we should be at least 5-1.
Yeah.
We should be.
Yeah.
But 4-3 is still, like I said, from what I thought we were going to be at this point in the season, head and shoulders.
Yeah, I think everybody knew we were going to have we were going to rely more on our defense this year, where we had a lot of unknowns.
Which is insane.
We had a lot of unknowns on the offensive side of the ball. You essentially have a true freshman quarterback starting. We essentially replaced our entire running back position, the entire wide receiver position. Mostly we replaced a ton on the offensive side of the ball when you look
Right.
at it. You had a lot of uncertainties about the offensive line. You got a true freshman starting at left tackle. Had a lot of injuries last year at that position on our offense. So I think we knew we were going to have some growing pains on the offense, and you're still seeing that. But I don't think anybody, myself included, did not envision our defense being what it is. I was, before we get into the game, and I think I told you this or sent you this yesterday, but a mutual friend of ours is a high school baseball coach, and one of his assistants, his father, is a big time insider in college football at the national level, and was talking with Kalen DeBoer after our game last weekend, and was talking about how our defensive line is probably the best in the entire country, hands down. And I knew we were going to be better. You never really know how the transfers you bring in are going to work out.
Right.
And so far they've been pretty good, between Kennard, Demetrius Knight, even just the depth that they bring. I mean, because we had 9 sacks yesterday, all from 9 different people.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to what Beamer and his staff did in the portal, but it's also another thing of, sticking through it as a player and not just transferring when something doesn't go your way. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. We're, a game over 500 after, Oklahoma's clearly not the team people expected them to be. But still, we went in there and got a dominating win yesterday. It wasn't perfect on the offensive side of the ball, but it's not always going to be that way.
Right.
And you have to take the good and the bad with the offense as they go through their growing pains when you have a true freshman, essentially a quarterback. He makes me nervous when he runs the ball because his arms are just all over the place.
Yes.
And it I swear, I think he's going to fumble it every time. There's a play, I think he was just scrambling where I thought he did fumble it because his right arm was just in it was in prime position for somebody to knock that ball out.
Sure.
But I think as Gamecock fans, and it's obviously easier to sit back here, sit where we are at now after watching our games against Alabama and LSU, where we should have won those games. Unfortunately, we didn't. But you learn from it and you move on. You can't. There's a bunch of what ifs you can always say. What if Shane Beamer didn't go for that 4th down on our first drive against Ole Miss? How would that game have gone?
Right.
So it's easy to sit here weeks after and say it, but I'm happy 4-3. I can't complain with the uncertainties we had on the offensive side of the ball. I'll take it. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not pretty. Am I frustrated that we didn't win 2 of those games? Yeah, but again, that's kind of what we expected from the Gamecocks this year.
If you sit back from a grand scheme of things, you have to be ecstatic for where we are. And even when you take into account, we should have won those games, you just got to – it's not going to change anything now. So sitting back and looking, you got to say, okay, we are way better than what everyone expected us to be. And just like Dan Orlovsky tweeted, which I don't really care for him. He makes some wild – opinion sometimes, but he was like, this is a top 15 team if they just have consistent play on the offensive side of the ball. Which is true.
Yeah, it's very true. And and Lenore's hasn't been perfect, but I think you can see he's progressed in my opinion, every game. He still makes some freshman mistakes, but again, that's just going to come with time. So let's get right into it. Carolina coming in to Oklahoma, who was a traditional, like Shane Beamer said in his post-game press conference, I guess you could consider them. What are you drinking? Is that an old school Coke? Oh man, those are awesome.
Yeah.
That's the best tasting Coke.
It is.
It's second below Coke from McDonald's. But coming in, facing Oklahoma, I think this is the first time South Carolina's ever played Oklahoma. The second time we've played a football game in the state of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma obviously had some issues on the offensive side of the ball, more than what we had. So I never, with South Carolina, what we've seen the first 6 games, you didn't know which team was going to show up, especially on the offense. But I feel like that game couldn't have started any better. First play of the game, interception by Nick Emanwari. We have a great offensive drive, started in great field position. I know this frustrated you.
Yes.
But I think we ran heavily on the first drive, and then the second possession we didn't run the
I think we
ball.
ran every play. The first play was a design pass that Sellers ended up just taking off and running.
Yeah.
And then from there, we just fed the running game and punched it in.
Yeah.
That first 6 minutes was insane of how that game took place.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could, even if you went on Twitter during, whenever it was going on, people were just, it was blowing up just because, I mean, it was insane.
Yeah. It couldn't have started any better. That interception the first interception by Nick was created by pressure generated by, I think it was Kyle Kennard, because he's mostly on, like, if we're standing behind the defense, he's usually on the right, and I feel like Dylan's on the left. But I know they switch him around, but I think Kyle was on the right side. Didn't sack him, but it generated enough pressure to kind of, get him off his feet, get him out of the pocket. And Nick just made a great athletic play to intercept that ball. We score, and then the next drive.
Fumble.
Was it the next drive, or was it where they punted it?
They punted it.
We had an offensive possession prior to that.
They punted it, and it didn't. Oh God, our next offensive drive was bonkers. It drove me insane. Let me make sure. I want to say that it was.
Let me pull up Yahoo Sports.
We had the. So they had. The fumble was right after. Because we scored the offensive touchdown after the interception with 12:33 on the clock, and then with 11:21 on the clock is when we got the fumble recovery touchdown.
Yeah, it was the next possession. You're right.
It was the very next possession. Then we stop them again. They punt it to us. We have an awful offensive drive, and here's my problem with it: is you just ran it fairly easily when we got that touchdown.
Yeah,
and like the announcers. We're even saying that Rocket Sanders tells the coaches, hey, just get me going. Like, just get my legs going, and then I progressively get better throughout the game.
Agreed.
Okay, so you feed him. You can see it on each run before that touchdown. Like, okay, he's starting to feel himself.
Yeah.
You got all this momentum. You get the kick, and then it's just like pass, 3 and out. What are we doing? Like, what was that?
Yeah. Honestly.
And listen, it may have been like this is what we wanted in the script. And so we're just going to continue to stick to the script, even though the game has kind of gone a different way than what we expected. But I just think that the only way that we're really going to be able to help our line and to help our passing game is to have consistent running game.
Yeah.
When you have that running game, it looks like it was going to be good coming out the gates. Why immediately go away from it on your next possession? Just kind of keep that going until they force themselves to stop it, and then open up the passing game.
So Oklahoma's second and third offensive drives resulted in defensive touchdowns. So we had the fumble recovery forced by Demetrius Knight, and then picked up by Tonka, big boy touchdown. Everybody loves a good big boy touchdown. Then the next play was the next drive was Nick's pick six.
Okay, and then it was the punt where the offense just went.
Yeah. I'm with you, and I think I was talking with you or Will yesterday. I was talking with a lot of people during the game. I understand the gripes completely, especially when, like you said, we have so much success. Like, and you obviously can't run the ball every play,
right?
And I think for the most part, Lenore's did a good job, and you can only go by the calls that are the plays that are called. It's just, I guess it's just trying. I don't know if it's Dowell or whoever's calling the offense. I don't know, where they're trying to get Lenore's in a rhythm, because it's kind of similar to Rocket, where once he gets going, like you keep feeding him, he keeps going. Same thing for Lenore's, and I guess it's just trying to find that happy median. And another thing is, until we get consistent offensive line play, I just think it's just gonna be the same thing with the offense, where we don't know an identity because our offensive line doesn't consistently block well enough to make those calls. And I know people said you need to roll out, but I don't think Lenore's is comfortable throwing the ball on the rolling out like that. So I don't know. I feel like it's a week to week thing that's going to happen with our offense. And like Caleb said, Oklahoma, it's not like they have a poor defense. They have a stout athletic defense. Yeah. And, I think we allowed 4 or 5 sacks yesterday as well. So it's, like I said, we can complain all we want to, but yeah, we allowed 6 sacks yesterday. So I don't know if that's something where it's on Lenore sometimes, but I think, and like Levi said, I think another thing is when you got up 21-0 like that, I don't know, and you may think differently, Stephen. Do you think their like aggressive play calling may change and not like try to ride out that lead, but it's like, okay, maybe I don't have to be as aggressive right now. I can afford to be a little conservative.
Well, it seemed like that they were trying to be more aggressive when it was 21-0 because that's what you were running the ball well on your first drive. You have back-to-back defensive drives where you score a defensive touchdown. Then you force them to punch you the ball. You get the ball, and it's like, all right, first play is a pass play. Second play, pass play. And then I think it was 3rd and 8, and then we try and run a speed option.
Yeah.
None of that made sense. And I get like you want to get Lenore's kind of going, but I still think with the way that our offensive line, when they've looked the best, is whenever we've been able to establish the run and then work back to the pass. And I think that with that 21-0, we don't have to force these passes. Let's get let's let our veteran guy get going first and let him open up the passing game for our young guy to try and get in his rhythm instead of trying to get them both in the rhythm at the same time.
Yeah.
It would have been different, I think, that if on that first drive we'd run the ball 3 times and get like 2 yards. But like we were moving the ball just running it. So let's just stick with that and then slowly work in the passing game, especially when you're not down. And even more so when you're up 21-0. Let's build confidence in an easier way than to try and force people into rhythm. If you're going to force somebody into a rhythm, force the guy that's a veteran. Yeah. He's been there. He's done that. And it's easier to force a run game into rhythm than it is to force a passing game into rhythm.
Agree.
And I think that will end up helping our offensive line. When they have looked the best is whenever we establish the run and then move to the pass. But yesterday we were just all over the place.
Yeah, they're like, and I think this was asked to Beamer after the Ole Miss game. I don't think we know what our offensive identity is, just because it's. I know the Casey Henry experiment I think is over at right tackle because he got removed yesterday, and it seemed to be like I said. It's we show spurts where we can run the ball, but then
we show spurts where we can pass the ball really well.
There's no fluidity to it.
Right.
It's like I think when Brian McClendon was the offensive coordinator under Muschamp, and let's just say for example, we ran a halfback draw and it worked and we got 20 yards. Well, the next 3 plays were going to be halfback draws.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's blame to be placed on both sides where I don't think Dow or whoever's calling the plays. I think it's Dow does the best. I still don't think he's the right man for the job.
No.
But also another thing is like I said, got to be able to block consistently. And I think they're still just trying to figure out what works best for our offense. And I know that's bad to say after 7 games, but it's really been different issues or the same issue as well week in and week out with our offense. It's the questionable play calling, but at the same time, it's the inability to block effectively where you can do that.
But like you said, I think that it's both sides. I think that it's just the line they're not stellar, but they've shown the ability to both run block and pass block. It's just the fact that it's like our play calling is so inconsistent that they can't even get in any kind of rhythm either.
Yeah, agree.
And nobody really talks about like offensive line rhythm, but you could see it. They were pushing off the ball on that first drive when we were running, establish that, and then allow them to, if a defense isn't having to respect either side and they can just attack the pass and run game, your offensive line is never going to get any kind of rhythm either. Nobody's in any rhythm. Your quarterback's not in a rhythm. Your running game's not in. Nobody's in rhythm.
One thing I was happy watching Lenore yesterday is when he's able to, and he's gotten better about this, where he scrambles, but he's not immediately running. But when he scrambles like that, it opens up a little bit. And he threw I think 2 very pretty, like he trying to drop a dime.
Yeah.
And I know Michael Smith dropped it, and I believe it was Lard Vidan. I think it's number 7.
Yeah.
Dropped. I mean, that would have been that was a tough catch to make anyways, but hit his hand, so you expect him to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, those were 2 big plays. Like if Michael Smith makes that catch, he's running probably for another 15, 20 yards.
That is
like that. It's just execution. I think our receivers are. Michael Smith is a true freshman. He's getting better. So it's stuff like that where I don't think the receiving group is our strongest asset. I think we need to continue to find ways to get Mazio. Nick Harbor has really impressed me the past 3 weeks.
They've slowly just implemented him into the offense, found the things that he can do well.
Yep.
And then you can start asking him to run crisper routes. Just find the things that he does well, get him involved because with his speed, if you get him involved at all, that is always in the defensive coach's mind and the defensive back's minds. Like, okay, at any moment he could blow past me. So just getting him involved in any type of way just opens up at least that they have to respect him every single play.
Because I think we do a good job of getting people involved. Because if you look at it, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 9 players with different. We had 9 players with catches yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's. Do I think? Like I said, I don't think Dow's the guy, but that's what we got to work with right now. But I think it's slowly coming. But I do think the way the game started, jumping out 21-0, definitely I think changed the way they approach the offense.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I just feel that's just the way it is. The touchdown pass from Lenoris to Joshua Simon in the first half, I thought it was a beautifully thrown ball.
Yeah.
It's a well executed play. And he did enough to keep to not lose us the game yesterday. And when your defense gives you 14 points, that's really all you need to do.
Yep.
So again, would I've loved to drop 60 points or try to drop 60 points, sure, but you're on the road in the SEC against a good Oklahoma defense. Like they gave up points to Texas, but I think that's just what we as Gamecock fans are used to, where our offense is not good and it can't keep the defense off the field, and therefore the defense tires out. And you did see that for a little bit in our game yesterday.
And that was kind of what was scary too, is because as good as the defense was playing, and they were playing lights out to where it looked like Oklahoma could do nothing. I mean, they really couldn't. Even when they weren't gifting us points, they weren't moving the ball. I think they have one touchdown, and that was in the second half.
That was a blown coverage too.
Yeah, and so, but the thing is, even when your defense is playing that good and you have a lead, if your offense isn't keeping them off the field, eventually, even when you're winning, it's the same as if you're winning or losing. If your defense is on the field, eventually there's going to be a breakdown in coverage. There's going to be something something's going to go wrong just because of them wearing down. So you got to have an offense that can at least make sustain some drives, flip field position, at least get field goals and then touchdowns eventually. But you got to help your defense out even when you're winning.
And it's nice to have Kai Kroger, the old Kai Kroger, back. Where, listen, as much as the offense struggles, having him to be able to flip the field like that and pin them inside their 20 majority of the time, even if he's kicking it out the end zone, they're still starting at their 20 to 25 yard line. And go back 2 years when especially when we beat Clemson in Clemson, where his punting really helped us win that game that day. So that's a huge a huge asset to have. Did you like the fake field goal to end the first half?
Sure. I thought it was a good call. I mean, it was wide open. I mean, literally, if he throws it 3 more yards further, that's a touchdown.
Yeah, and
especially how it
they rushed him, so he couldn't really get comfortable.
Yeah. So, and I mean, you're up big. You got a chance to steal big points there. Your field goal kicker, I can't really remember where they were at.
It was like right at his top max.
Right. So you really don't know if you were going to get those points anyways. Like I said, if it was 14-10, or if it was like a close game, I would not have liked the call there. But just the way that the game was going, I think we had just scored that touchdown, maybe the possession before that.
Yeah.
So it was like you had your defense rolling, you had your offense rolling. Why not? Let's just see. And it was there.
And
I was there.
we got the ball coming out of the
Right,
second
exactly. So
into the second
if you
half.
hit that too, if you hit that, score a touchdown there, and then get the ball at second half,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it would have it could have pushed the game even further,
Yeah.
obviously. But
We had the 2-point conversion.
yep.
Honestly, I didn't even get to see the I had to do something in the house. I didn't even get to see the touchdown pass to Simon. And I was like, I'm so superstitious. I was like, maybe I'll just stay back here the rest of the game and not watch it. But I think the story coming out of this game yesterday, before we move on to the Clemson game, is our defense. Like I said, we had 9 sacks. We had 4 or 5 turnovers forced, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. It's really just a dominating performance from the front 7.
I think
And
there had
honestly,
to be more fumbles than that. There was only I guess it was only 2 forced fumbles. It
we
felt
had
like
4
they
turnovers.
all more than
Yeah,
I feel like
they fumbled it a
more.
couple of times, but they recovered it.
Right.
And it just goes to show what Clayton White got a lot of heat in his first really 3 years under Beamer, where
he earned it. He earned that heat.
And he did. But the job he's done in the offseason, and honestly, the entire defensive staff, we need I don't know what the future holds for this staff with the new athletic director coming in, but as long as Shane Beamer is the head coach, we need to keep Sterling Lucas.
Yeah.
Him and I think it's Travian Robertson. I'm thinking of Tavares Robinson, the old defensive coordinator. What him and Travian have done with the defensive line, where, I think, before Travian got there, it almost felt like our especially our D tackles, the interior of our defensive line, just wasn't a bully position. Like it wasn't what they are right now. And I think he brought that bulldog mentality and toughness, and you're seeing it whether it's Tonka, Boogie, TJ Sanders, Jules, whoever on that interior defensive line. They are just as destructive as our DNs, and it's whether
I think that it stems from the DNs too, because anybody that's asked me about this defense, it's the same team as last year,
mostly,
except for the ability to rush the passer consistently and them have that fear just walking into the game, not even getting into a rhythm, or just coming into the game knowing they're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
It opens up everything else. It frees up the defensive backs to be a little bit more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and I'm not sure if you heard it, but the broadcast mentioned like what was big that he did, Clayton White did during the offseason to change up how they approach defense.
I think he was doing something with NFL or something, right?
So he went and basically said, okay, let's stop looking at it from a defensive perspective. Let's look at it from an offense and say, if I'm an offensive coordinator or an offensive player, what would I hate to have to deal with?
Yeah.
And a lot of the stunts and spins and moves that the defensive line makes now, they basically said, okay, we were calling defense for an old school type of offense. Instead, let's learn what they're doing on a new style of offense, and then tailor our defense towards that, which is brilliant to think about. Like obviously their job is defensive coordinators and coordinating defense, but you got to know what an offense hates to go up against to be able to know what you want to do. And I think that is just because, like I said, you added basically top tier pass rushers, but other than that, it's the same team as last year. So
and
he definitely made a huge change in his philosophy and how they go about things.
And
trust me, I was his number one hater.
Yeah,
and
I think we all were. I think we all were.
You got to give him his flowers. He's done an amazing job.
And another thing is, when you're getting paid the money that these coordinators make nowadays, people expect results.
Yeah.
And one thing I like watching, you mentioned stunts and everything, and it's just how they get creative in the way they actually do stunts, where it's like it used to be, this D tackle goes this way and this D tackle goes that way. And it's really, or like the delayed blitzes, like you look at the fumble Demetrius Knight forced yesterday, and that was a big pickup from Charlotte. That was like a delayed blitz. And you look at the force or the fake punt Oklahoma tried to run. He knew it was coming before they even called it. And as soon as that ball, like before they even hiked the ball, he was already running over there. And before the kid even caught the ball, he was already making the tackle. So, but I think that's the importance of having like experienced defensive players and the way they watch film and everything. You have to give a ton of credit to our the defensive staff and what they've done this offseason. Oh Lord.
They definitely
Are you in the comments?
Yeah.
Honestly, we've never had a Tennessee fan hop in.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to y'all's game, Big Orange, here shortly after we get through. Don't give a piss about the Tiger. Always remember. It might be the title of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a ton of credit to the defensive staff. I mean, it's crazy to think even if we just had a somewhat competent or more competent offense, what this team would be capable of. But again, like we said at the top of the show, 4-3 going in the second bye week, I'm gonna take it.
Yeah. And you really, I mean, looking at it the way that we're playing, if you do find some kind of groove offensively, you could very well see yourself going into that Clemson game at 8-3.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't think I'm sorry, let me say this and I'll get back to you. If Lenore doesn't get hurt against LSU, I still think we win that game.
Yeah, I agree. The offense was looking, I mean, he was making some young mistakes, but the offense as a whole was still looking pretty good against LSU. And I think that if he stays in rhythm, we can definitely move the ball a little bit better and keep our defense off the field in that LSU game, and we probably win that one.
Yeah. Well, let's do our 5 minutes on the Clemson game. I watched it for a few minutes up until
they keep Carolina playing at the same time.
I know, man. It's tough. Like I said, we benefited watching, Carolina started at 12:45 yesterday. But Clemson brought in Virginia. Virginia was 4-2 coming into this game. Former Clemson, Clemson fans are very familiar with Virginia's coach, Tony Elliott. And I mean, I thought Virginia gave them a game for a little bit. And again, I know Virginia scored, I think, like 21 points in the fourth quarter. I don't know if that was garbage time. I couldn't tell you if Clemson had their, second team in. So if we have any Clemson fans in the chat, please hop in and let us know. But again, Clemson continues to roll, and I will say this, and I think we've kind of given Cade his praises on this show. When he threw that early interception yesterday, I was like, oh boy, here we go. This is like Clemson always finds a way to find themselves in like a trap game. But I think that shows the growth of Cade since, last year maybe, where he really just buckled down and had another big day for the Tigers.
Yeah, he did. I was scoreboard watching, keeping up with theirs, and I mean, Virginia was up 10-3 halfway through the second quarter. So I mean, they were kind of giving them a run for their money there for a while, and then, like you said, they just kind of put the pedal to the metal and went down.
It's like Clemson.
I'm sure some of those fourth quarter points were, they seem like, and it was the same way against Wake Forest last week. I mean, Wake Forest was winning going into the second quarter. It just seems like Clemson, to compare them to another, they're kind of like PD Academy that we covered in our high school show, where they just, that they had the ability to throttle you.
Yeah.
And it's just like they come in a little bit slow to start with, and they allow these teams to just kind of stick with them, and then they just run away with it. But yeah, I figured it was 38-10 going into, the fourth quarter. So
yeah,
at that point, don't risk your starters, especially when at this point Clemson's, still vying for that ACC championship and getting into the playoffs.
Yep. And they're going into their bye week as well. So another strong win for Clemson. I'm sorry, folks. I tried to get a couple Clemson fans on today. I'd love to be able to get to talk about them more. If we keep playing at the same time, this is about as much as you're going to get from us on Two Guys Talking Sports. But again, Clemson continues to impress. Just my only question mark with them is they haven't faced like they
tough
face real
competition.
competition, but they haven't faced tough competition. Like,
Yeah.
so you don't really know what Clemson is about because and I know we've said this time and time again, they can't control who they play, but when you look at how they opened against Georgia, and I know they've definitely improved since then, but
Yeah.
as to what degree? And like Levi said, they've got Pitt in a couple weeks, but I just don't even know about Pitt, to be honest with you. Let's look at
Yeah.
Pitt.
Pitt played Kent State, Cincinnati, West Virginia, Youngstown State, North Carolina, and Cal.
Yeah, so it's like I just don't know. I don't even know about them. And I
Yeah,
mean,
don't
you
know
got
how good Louisville
Louisville.
is. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
4-3.
Louisville lost yesterday to I think Miami. So and you could say the same thing about Miami. You don't really know how good Miami is because again, they haven't had the toughest schedule. They struggled against um, Virginia Tech and hold on, who did they play last week? Virginia Tech and Cal. But they did struggle, I guess, a little bit last week or yesterday against Louisville because it was an offensive shootout. So Cam Ward's probably, playing himself into the Heisman. He's in the Heisman conversation.
Yeah.
But who's if he's going to win the Heisman? So I truly just don't know because Miami's got Florida State next weekend. They are god awful. Yeah, I mean Levi's definitely right. Like, and I'm gonna address this in our like national conversation topic here shortly about
The
the
thing
top.
that would worry me with Clemson too is, like I said, when you get into that Pitt game or someone like them with these slow starts, that they're getting out to the last few weeks, is
Yeah.
that going to be, obviously then they're able to pull away from some of these teams. And when you face tougher competition and they stick with you,
Yeah.
it makes it a little bit harder when you come out with those slower starts. What's interesting to me is how the ACC is going to even determine who plays in that championship game. Because you're
It's just
looking
two
at it
best
right
teams
now,
with the best
right?
record.
But you're looking at it right now. Clemson will most likely be undefeated in the ACC. Miami will most likely be undefeated in the ACC. SMU will most likely be undefeated in the ACC, and none of them play each other in the regular season.
Yeah,
So you could walk in with a 3-way tie. How in the world do you decide that? Does it come down to non-conference wins? Because what if Miami and SMU are undefeated as a whole and Clemson has that one loss to Georgia? Does that kick them out, or is it margin of victory in your ACC games? Because if that's the case, then like yesterday when Clemson's up 38-10 in the fourth quarter,
yeah.
If it comes down to margin of victory, well, you just got to keep blowing people out, and you can't pull your starters, because if that's what it comes to, and I really don't know. And I was having this conversation with a Clemson fan yesterday. It's like how would that be decided? Neither one of those three teams won't play each other, and there's a good chance that all three could finish the season undefeated in conference play.
Okay, I've got the ACC official tiebreaker policy. So it says the Atlantic Coast Conference football champion will be decided by a game between the top two postseason eligible teams. This is small. The two teams with the highest percentage of wins during all regular season conference competitions shall play in the championship game. If three or more such teams are tied with the highest percentage of wins, or two or more teams are tied with the second highest percentage of wins, the following tiebreaker procedure shall be administered to determine the representatives in the championship game. The team with the highest win percentage, either outright or after application of the tiebreaker, shall be declared the number one seed for the championship game. All right, so let's do three or more team tie. The procedure will first be used to identify one championship game representative. Once that team is determined, the tiebreaker procedures restart for the remaining tie teams. So combined head-to-head win percentage among the tied teams, if all teams are
so that would be out.
So that one's out. Number two, if all tied teams are not common opponents, the tied team that defeated each of the other tied teams. So if all the tied teams are not common opponents, no tied team defeated each of the other tied teams, but a tied team lost. Okay, so it's got win percentage versus all common opponents, win percentage versus common opponents based on their order of finish, overall conference win percentage with ties broken in proceeding through other common opponents based upon their order of finish, combined win percentage of conference opponents, the tie team with the highest ranking by team rating score metric.
So that's what
Honestly, I
Levi's
don't
saying.
know.
So strength of results. So basically, all the ACC teams that they do beat, what would there be their, I guess, their combined record? So let's just say that Clemson's, the, their competitors, final was 12-5, and then
Yeah.
SMU's was 13-4. With it would go to SMU because they have a higher strength of result, I guess. I honestly think that it's going to come down to something like that. I could very well see all three of those teams finishing undefeated in their conference play.
Well, SMU plays Pitt too, and Boston College, Virginia, California. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if Clemson and Carolina, sorry, if Clemson and SMU both beat Pitt, like that would be probably used as a tiebreaker right there. So, because I mean,
but if they both beat them, then that's kind of out because they both won against a common opponent. So,
but what I'm saying though is I think it would go into how they won. So if it's like Clemson won by 3 and Miami or SMU won by 28, I think that would put them over. So I mean,
it'll be interesting if
that's what I like about this new format with the conferences are going, because it gets, no matter what happens, the best team from each or the best teams from each conference going into their championship games.
Yeah.
Whereas like you look at the year South Carolina went and won the East in 2010, we were 7-5. We had no business being in that game.
Right.
There should have been, for a long time up until really a couple years ago, it could have been 2 teams from the West that made the SEC championship game. It was that good. So
Vanderbilt did get ranked. Oh, this is the coaches poll.
What a joke. Sorry.
Oregon's number 1 in the coaches poll.
Yeah, so going into that, going to recap some national games from yesterday, last night.
First, before we get into that, both teams are on a bye week next week. I think that will also be interesting because South Carolina came out of their bye week very poor.
Yeah.
So whatever they did last time on the bye, don't do that this time. Change something up.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the same thing. You're going to have a lot of hype coming into that Texas A&M game. It's going to be at home. It's going to be a night game.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, it's still TBD.
Well, the ESPN app says it'll be between 6 and 8. So it will be at least late afternoon to a night game.
Yeah, because the time changes that weekend, night actually.
So whatever they did, before the Ole Miss game and that bye week, don't do that. Do something different. Yeah, because you got to come out prepared. Because, like I said, this is the part of your schedule that you need to win every game.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And you got to at least find 2 wins in this back half. So,
well, I mean, we've got Wofford, so that's 1. If we lose to Wofford, we just have no business. So, but honestly, I think we can find 2 wins out of our remaining games, and I think.
Honestly, I think we should be 8-3 going into the Clemson game. Hopefully. The way that our defense is playing, if they continue to play like that, I don't see any offense that we face coming up besides maybe Clemson's that would be better than what we've faced so far.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And if 100%. We can just get more consistent play, and like Caleb said, if you want to take, his up and down his offense, look, we didn't turn the ball over any. So at least you had that. That was the first clean game that we've played offensively in terms of we didn't give it away.
Yeah.
So whatever happened in that last bye week, throw that away. Throw that plan away. We need to do something different.
Yep. All right. Let's start with the Georgia-Texas game from last night. Georgia was victorious 30-15. And like – I think it was Levi. Hold on. Let me find this. I think this comment perfectly encapsulates college football this year. I couldn't tell you who the top team in the country is right now. I don't think there's a clear-cut number 1. Georgia's defense just straight up had their way with the Texas Longhorns, who, many people had as the number 1 team. They were ranked as the number 1 team in the country. Texas made a quarterback change, and I'm going to ask you about that here shortly. But just a dominating win for the Georgia Bulldogs. Texas had a little bit of momentum going for just a few minutes, but that Texas defense is the Georgia defense is too stout.
Yeah.
But late in the first half, Stephen, Texas made a quarterback change and took out Quinn Ewers for Arch Manning. And the thing is, it's like, I didn't agree with it because it's not like Quinn Ewers was playing bad. It's just Georgia's defense just had their way with that front line, the offensive line.
Yeah.
But then they go into halftime and put back in Quinn Ewers. What's your take on that?
If you make the quarterback change, just stick with that change at least for the rest of that game.
Yeah.
Because what you've already done is you've told your quarterback that you took out, all right, we don't have any confidence in you in this game right now. We don't think that you're going to be able to do anything to win this game for us. So in his mind, that's all where he's already there mentally is that, okay, it was, maybe it wasn't going good. You just pulled me out. So obviously you're telling me that you don't believe that I can do anything in this game.
Yeah.
Putting him back in it's not going to help you at all. Like you've already just, like I said, if it's the next game, you go back to him, that's fine. You've had a week to kind of, wash it off, get it out of your head kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
But in the middle of the game, it's already not going your way. You get benched. Your coaching staff has basically told you, we don't believe in you in this game.
Yeah.
And then you put them back in. You can't expect too much more from them.
Yeah. And I think they wanted to try something different because I think Arch Manning gives them a little bit more, like he can run the ball. Like he's more of a running quarterback compared to Quinn Ewers. Yeah. So maybe they thought that was going to work, but it didn't. So it's like you said, I feel like if you're making a quarterback change, now there's a huge difference if you just bring in like South Carolina does with Robbie Ashford sometimes. Like he's more of a better runner.
If you have that package built in and it's like in your, it's in your playbook and it's in your, your whatever, your plan for the week is to do that. That's one thing because yours already knows, okay, well, we're definitely going to use this package, or at least it's in the game plan to use. Mm-hmm. So if they come in and they run that package, that's fine. But if that's not the case, if it's just a straight up, we're benching you right now, we're taking you out to try and get a spark here, that's just completely different. That's just telling the quarterback we don't believe that you got it today.
Yeah, and I'll put this back on the Carolina Oklahoma game yesterday. They interviewed Jackson Arnold after the game and talking about how he got benched after during the Tennessee game, and they put in the freshman quarterback, and I kind of agree with him to a degree because you don't want to waste a year of eligibility if you don't have to. But he told Coach Brent Venables, he's like, I don't want to be taking unnecessary snaps. Like if I'm going to be the guy, I want to be the guy. And it's kind of like a catch-22 where you want to be a team player first, but you also don't want to waste a year of eligibility if you're not going to be the starting quarterback. Yeah. And I agree. I think he is their, Jackson Arnold's their best option going forward. But again, like if you're going to yank somebody, like you said, yank them and you ride with that decision. And I don't think Arch Manning was the right decision last night because that Georgia defense is essentially, and Georgia's, I don't think they're as good, at least on the offensive side of the ball, as they have been the past couple of years. And you see that for sure. But again, this goes to a bigger national picture is who are the top teams in the country? Like really Oregon, Ohio State, had a really easy schedule up until they played Oregon, and their coaching kind of cost them in that game, in my opinion. Is Tennessee a top team? I don't know. Is Alabama a top team? I don't know. Like it's so tough to get a read on this college football season because these top
like
teams
I said last week, I think that these teams, there's a lot more parity now within college football. I just think that the ability, as much as people don't like how the transfer portal necessarily works, it is creating more parity throughout because you had a ton of players were sitting on teams like Georgia, like Alabama, like Texas, these bigger teams, and they would sit there for 2 or 3 years and be top end talent, just waiting on their turn.
Yeah.
But then now they're just realizing, okay, I can go and start here now, play now, and be on a good football team.
Yeah.
I mean, just like South Carolina, you're getting people like Kyle Kennard to come, and they're changing teams up.
Yeah.
Legit, 2 players. One of them was a high school player. Well, let's say 3, because Knight is making a big difference too now. But basically, you have 2 to 3 players that come in and they change the whole perspective and how a defense plays. I think that you're getting that more throughout college football, so that you don't have just like the 2, when it was Clemson and Alabama there for a while, where it was just like, all right, it's them 2 and then kind of everybody else.
Yeah, and another thing is you have essentially these super conferences where, the Pac, was it the Pac-12? Yeah, that a lot. It's mostly SEC and Big Ten teams now. And then Levi, we were going to get to this. We'll go ahead and hop into it now. Steven, I don't know if you saw this, because I know you had a nice little movie night, date night with the wife. But to kind of set the scene for everybody's watching that may have not watched the game last night, or the Georgia-Texas game last night, Georgia was like pinned within their, like, I think the line of scrimmage was maybe they're like 8 or 10 yard line. That's not really that important. But Carson Beck throws a pass to number 11 for Georgia. It's a physical play.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Texas intercepts it. The DB intercepts it for Texas, returns it. I think he gets tackled within, like, inside the 10-yard line, and then there's a flag thrown, and they called defensive pass interference. Well, like, mayhem ensues. They pull the Texas student section. Okay, the Texas student section pulls a page out of the South Carolina student section playbook and just starts throwing bottles on the field and everything. So within that, like, time frame of when they're trying to get the field cleaned off, I mean, you had Sarkisian going to the student sections, like, holding his hands up saying, please stop. And sometime within that, when the bottles got thrown on the field to cleaning up the trash, the referees met and essentially waved the flag off. And that's a subjective penalty. It's not a reviewable penalty. And it's not common for, like, a flag to get thrown, and then before they actually call the flag, they will determine, like, okay, this was intentional grounding. This was not a holding call or whatnot. They converse and talk together. Well, the issue is with this one is they called the penalty and assessed it. And then during that break, that's when they got together and then made the call. So it's like it set this precedent, like, and I think Kirby Smart had every right to be upset. And I don't think that's something you should overturn like that after it's already been called. It's one thing if you throw the flag, the refs meet together, they discuss, okay, I didn't get a clear view or whatnot. I'm not positive. It looked like it. So they're going to wave the flag. And I'm curious to get your take on it. If you're watching this, put your thoughts in the comments. I think that sets a bad precedent. Yeah. It almost seemed like the refs got bullied into changing the call. And again, that's not a penalty that's reviewable. So it should, once you make the call, no matter what it is, you have to stand by that.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, like you said, if I'm, the back judge and I think I see pass interference, I'll throw the flag. We converse real quick, and somebody else says, no, he didn't grab his jersey. I had a clear view of it. Okay, it's not pass interference. Wave the flag off. That's fine. Or people might not like it, but that's fine.
And it was the right call. Like, they should have waved the flag off, but it's just you called the penalty, and you can't then just go back and say, oh no, we're changing our mind.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing is, like, once you say pass interference on number 2. 15 yard, whatever it is. Okay, that you've made the call. It stands now.
Yep.
It's not a reviewable, like you said, it's not reviewable. You can't throw a challenge flag and say, no, go and review this. And then they come back and say, have to review. No, you made the call. Like, you thought that you saw it, whether you saw right or wrong, you made that call. You can't go back just because you had time to sit there and talk about it and think about it because they were clearing the field off. Nah, like you made the call. Oh well.
Yeah.
And you kind of hear announcers or coaches say this is like, sometimes they'll make a bad call. They'll realize they've made a bad call, and then they'll just kind of make another bad call going the other way. And you'll hear announcers say, when they were kind of making up for that last one. Do that before you come back and just say, you know what, we talked about it, and no, we're just going to wave that one off. You can't do that.
Yeah, and like Levi said, it was a bad call. Like it was good. It was a good physical play where they're both. You honestly could have thrown both of them and just waved the flag. Like it had just been offsetting penalties.
Yeah.
It's just my thing. It just sets a bad precedent. Again, like I said, it's if you meet after the flag is thrown to determine everything and you wave it off, that's fine. Not many people, like I know a Clemson account posted this on Twitter where people were talking about, or they were talking about a flag that got called off in the Georgia game for Clemson. But the thing is like they threw the flag, they conversed, they waved it off. That's a completely different story than throwing the flag, calling the penalty, giving them the yards, then mayhem ensues with the bottles being thrown on the field, and then they decide to change it. And that's not how it should be. But that's the story of SEC refs. They are not good.
I think that what they should do, and I think Pat McAfee said this before on his show, is like after the games, the refs should have press conferences as well.
Yeah, there's no.
They're the only people involved in the game that are never asked questions or never have to come out and give a response. Like the coaches are going to be asked about that call, the players are going to be asked about that call, and they're going to be able to respond and say what they want to say. And there's like, okay, the refs run off the field, and you never get an explanation. The closest thing that you get to an explanation is sometimes, I'm not even sure if the SEC does it, but I know the NFL will sometimes post from their referee account, like during this play, this was a penalty that was called on the field. After we went back and watched film on it, that technically would not have been a penalty. I've seen that before from like official NFL accounts and stuff. But other than that, like you never hear from the refs. You can't. They should have to come sit at a table just like the rest of them.
Yeah.
And someone be able to ask them, hey, you made this call. They threw bottles while that was happening. What was said, and why did you then go back and change a call? And they should have to answer for it.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like nothing would infuriate me more as a fan, and I don't think this has like directly affected us as Gamecock fans, but nothing would infuriate me more where if it's like, let's just say, for example, a team scores and it was a clear like push off pass interference or something like that, where it should have never been a touchdown. And then 3 days later, the SEC officiating Twitter account releases this statement saying they screwed up the call. Sorry. Like, no, that's no accountability. And that doesn't give back those points. And
here's the thing. It's also not, Joe Blow having to actually take accountability for his mistake. Just like when Beamer makes that stupid call to go for it on fourth down after the game, he's asked about it and he has to respond for why he made that decision.
Yeah.
And the players will have to do it too.
Yeah.
So why aren't the refs, when they screw up, they should be able to be asked point blank and they should have to respond and say, look, I screwed up.
Yeah. I will say this. And so like in the Premier League, and people who don't follow soccer, that's the Pro League in the UK for the main teams. Like Manchester United, West Ham, Chelsea, Liverpool. So in soccer, they have what they call VAR. So when a controversial play happens or a penalty check or everything, they go to VAR. Well, a lot of times what they've started doing is they will actually release all the communications between all the parties involved in that decision. And it's like the on-field ref, the VAR, head referee, and I think there's like 2 or 3 others, like the line judges or whatever they're called, assistant referees or whatever they're called in the soccer, and you hear everything that they're discussing.
Yeah.
And
they did that
that even provides a little bit of clarity. Like even if like in a perfect world, yes, it would be nice if referees did press conferences, but at least if we know the reason why, like, okay,
Yeah.
on the after review or like when they challenge the play, like they kind of explain to you, or some referees do, why they overturned it or why it was upheld.
Right.
And if you're going to wave off a flag, you should explain why it is. Like, okay, after, we're waving the flag, this is the reason why. Like, it doesn't take that long to explain everything.
Yeah, XFL. That's what I was saying. XFL
Is
did
that
that as well.
recently or is that the original XFL?
No, recently.
Okay,
What they
I
do
never
is
watched it.
when there's a review of a play, they actually take you into the booth where they're doing the review. They have mics to where the people doing those reviews say, "Look, this, we called it a catch, but actually, right here you can see his foot is touching the white. He's out of bounds. This isn't a catch. Overturn the call." And then they go on the field and they overturn the call. And you can see everything that they do to determine and make that decision.
Yeah.
I think that they should do that in the NFL and they should do that in college. But the thing is, even in this situation, that's not even a reviewable call. Like, this is just you made a bad call. You had because so what happens there if the fans don't throw stuff on the field?
Oh,
they
it
just
definitely
go to the next play, then the call just stands.
stands.
So then it should never change just because you had an injury or like I said, the fans throwing stuff on the field. Just because you got more time to talk about it, you can't go back and change your call.
Yeah, and honestly, I hate when fans throw stuff on the field. It's such a bad look. Right. Like, it's such like a toddler throwing a tantrum. It's like if you told your daughter, like, no, don't do that, and she just starts like rolling all over the floor and like screaming bloody murder, and it's like, okay, like, not referring to your child, but like the kids, the students, grow up. You're adults. Like, don't do that. That's stupid. That's childish. And honestly, I think the way you prevent it is you start penalizing the home team. Yeah. Like, that's, if we have to stop play for X, Y, and Z reasons, it's going to result in these penalties. Like, teams get sideline infraction warnings. Mm-hmm. You get one warning, and then if you do it again, you start getting penalized.
They actually can throw flags for the crowd if the refs determine it. They can do that. I mean, I've seen it done before. It's obviously after they've done stuff, repeatedly through the game. Eventually, it gets to that point. But it's stupid, and then it ends up causing this situation because, like I said, I think that if they don't do that, and then we just immediately go to the next play, they don't change that call.
Yeah, and luckily it didn't end up really affecting. I mean, Texas went on to score that drive, and it really, really, really shifted the momentum in that game where it was. Hold on, I can't remember what the score was at this time. It may have been like 23 or like 25 to
23 to 8.
Well, no, when Texas scored, because
before the call it was 23 to 8.
Okay, so that's then it becomes 23. 15. So technically a one possession game, and like I said, Kirby Smart had every right to be upset, and but again,
what's crazy is they make that bad call. They don't have any kind of accountability. They don't have to come out and say anything. But
this isn't their full-time job,
right? And when Kirby Smart goes and he makes the comments about the ref, he's more likely going to get a fine from the SEC. So now you didn't do your job right. You didn't have to take accountability, and because a coach called you out on it, he's going to end up having to pay a fine, which is ridiculous.
And he even mentioned in his post-game press conference where he was like, I'm going to watch what I say out of respect for the way the SEC or the Southeastern Conference wants us to do things. But I think Georgia's athletic director even came out and like released like a big statement. They need to be held accountable. But again, Georgia wins. Let's move on to the Tennessee-Alabama game. One thing Tennessee wins 24-17. One thing I realized after watching that game is there are a lot of kids that don't know how to smoke a cigar.
Yeah, that was.
Oh my goodness, that was insane. But really, I think what's most surprised me about Alabama this year, like there's always going to be a dip in a program when a legend and probably the best college football coach of all time and Nick Saban leaves, and you bring in a new coach, like because Kalen DeBoer doesn't have the same philosophy as Saban.
Right.
But really, what stood out to me the most in their 2 losses against Vanderbilt and Tennessee is just how undisciplined they are. You look at they're trying to drive to try to win the game late in the 4th quarter, and I believe it was a 3rd down play where I think Jalen Milroe passed the ball, it was incomplete, and players are always jawing at each other. Like, that's nothing new in collegiate athletics.
Yeah.
But the kid from Alabama shoved him or pushed him in the face or something. And honestly, it should have been offsetting penalties because the Tennessee player swung at him too, but he missed. But it just backed up Alabama 15 yards. And that gives you maybe a 4th and manageable short yards position to now it's 3rd and 18. And it completely changes the way you're going to make a play call where it's like, okay, we're in 3rd down position. It's 3rd and 8 or whatever. We know it's 4 down territory. You don't have to make a 1st down off this play. Right. Like, if you get us to like 4 and 2, that's okay. Like, don't make a mistake. And they made a mistake. And it's like, that's not something you're used to seeing from an Alabama team. And excuse me.
Not even like a mistake.
Twice.
Yeah. Not even a mistake of like a holding or something like that. It's just like a
stupid
mental. Yeah. And that, like you said, you don't see, you could tell there's a different culture. And even if you go back to, and this didn't really affect the game, but you can just go back to when Vanderbilt was kneeling out the game and you see an Alabama player take his mouthpiece and chunk it into, like, you would have never seen that.
They were kicking the football. Like, I remember a clip where this is when A.J. McCarron was the backup at Alabama. And I don't know what the play was, but this clip just circulates on social media so much. He's walking off the field. And mind you, Alabama's winning big. And Nick Saban is chewing his butt out. And again, I understand not all coaches are like that. Like, you don't have to, in my opinion, you don't have to be like that for every player. Or for every coach doesn't have to be like that in order to have a successful program. But again, like, there just seems to be no discipline on that team. Yeah. And it's like the players, and I don't know if this is just a microcosm of how college football is going, but it seems to be like they don't have control of their players because it isn't a one-off issue. Again, penalties are going to happen. Like you said, if it's a holding call, that's different. But like, players are going to try to get under your skin. Just go back. And it's just so dumb. And like Levi said, Nico and Jackson Arnold were the 1 and 2 quarterbacks out of their class. I think Nico can be a good quarterback, but he's taken his growing pains. Like, it's not as like he's not, God's gift creation for the Tennessee Volunteers.
The other thing with him is like he got hyped. He's already he's top 2 quarterback coming in out of high school, and then they play these nobody teams to begin with, and he looks pretty good, but you're playing no competition, and they already hype him up like, okay, he was number 2. Look at him, how he's playing now. And then you finally play competition. And it's just like, okay, like you aren't, obviously the talent's probably there, but it's not like you're going to come straight out of high school and be the Heisman.
Well, he had hype coming into the season because he did so good against Iowa in the bowl game. But here's another thing, and this is true for any quarterback in baseball, like with new players, like the more tape you put out, the more opportunities you give opposing defenses to learn your tendencies. Yeah. And I think
that's a good thing for Sellers is he just showed you all of his weaknesses from game 1. Yeah. So he can only go up from there.
Thank you for the subscription, No Playing Dinero. Thank you for all the support. Yeah, it's just he's going to have his growing pains. Like you were saying, Lenore, he's showing, but he's given teams more opportunities to watch his game film and see what his tendencies are. And you're seeing that with Nico Imaliava. And that's okay. But for Tennessee fans to, thinking it was going to be smooth sailing, like you said, their non-conference schedule was a joke, which a lot of these top teams have jokes of a non-conference schedule. And, it's one thing because a lot of these games are scheduled years in advance. So if South Carolina schedules a game against, I don't know, let's just say Boise State, and they're a good football team right now, but if the games don't start until 2028, both teams could be completely different programs in that time frame. But I just don't know about Tennessee. Do I think they're good? Yeah. Do they have a shot at making the playoff? Yeah. But I don't know.
I
Like
don't think they're
it's tough
top
to get a
10.
read. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to get a read. I don't think Tennessee obviously won the game, but I don't think it was something where I think Alabama kind of lost the game at the same time.
Yeah. I'll
So
say this too. I think that where they had Milroe at in terms of Heisman, you just replace him with Cade. I think that a few weeks ago, you probably would have still had Milroe in like the top 3 or 4, at least in the betting odds.
yeah.
I think that Cade's probably worked his way into the top.
Yeah.
He might be there on the final night.
And honestly, there's just I don't know. It's tough to get a read on who the Heisman favorites are this year. Levi, you are very right. Tennessee's defense, especially their front seven, are insanely talented this year. Like if you had Tennessee's defense this year and you put them on their last year, the year we beat them,
Yeah.
I like when they had Hendon Hooker and they were rolling. I think they could have probably won the national championship that year. Like if you take out Hendon getting hurt against us in that game, their defense is legit this year.
Yeah, I think that Tennessee is they're in a better position. They're better positioned in terms of experienced players on the offensive side of the ball than South Carolina because they're kind of in the same boat where legit, probably championship worthy defenses, both teams, but then you just have inconsistency at your quarterback from a young quarterback. But I think that Tennessee just has a little bit more in terms of weapons offensively where they can still do a little bit more than what South Carolina's been able to do so far offensively. But I think they're in the same boat. Like you've got a defense that can get you there, but like you just don't know what you're going to get from that young quarterback in their offense.
Yeah.
Especially, when they're playing teams, like Georgia. Who knows though? We say that,
Yeah.
But you can't really say who is a top team right now.
Yeah.
Again.
I mean, we'll move right along to Indiana, Nebraska. I'm so tired of this Nebraska hype because we talk about teams playing a weak schedule. Nebraska's the perfect example of that. And anytime they play a team that is ranked or like highly, or maybe not highly or way better than them, they always play awful and they get destroyed.
Yeah.
They can have the offensive coordinator in Satterfield. Missouri wins at home against Auburn, 21-17. I'm gonna give Brady
real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Indiana, is that their coach? Is he new?
Yeah, he came from James Madison.
Okay,
I believe.
So did you see his post game when they asked him about this win or whatever, and he was like, "Yeah, all I do is win. Google me." And they pulled up his stats, and he was like, "Everywhere he's been, like he wins games." That's what he said. He walked off the field and he was like, "Yeah, all I do is win. Google me."
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think he came from James Madison. But again, that Nebraska, I don't know. It's just I think they're living off all their success from the early days of college football, and they've and they were good in the 90s, but the past 2 decades they've been irrelevant. I want to give a shout out to Brady Cook. The Missouri quarterback, he left the game, went to the hospital, had an MRI, and then came back and finished the game and led Missouri to a win over Auburn. I don't know. I'm torn with Auburn because they fired Brian Harsin. And now you can argue, was he the right man for the job? I don't know. But they gave him a short leash, and it's really just been the same, if not worse, under Hugh Freeze. And it seems to be they're happy with trying to ride it out, knowing it's going to get resolved. I don't know. But Auburn they are not good, and I don't think Missouri's as good as they were last year. They obviously lost their stud of a defensive coordinator who's now at LSU. I don't know if that's it, but their offense just doesn't seem to be what it was a year ago. South Carolina plays them in a few weeks as well. I think we go Texas A&M, Missouri, at Vanderbilt, Wofford,
Texas
Clemson.
A&M, at Vanderbilt, back home for Missouri.
Okay.
Wofford, Clemson.
Okay. Yeah. So big win for Missouri. next game we have, I'm waiting for the
But
ticket
I
to come
mean,
back.
that's like you just don't know what you're getting with Missouri because like they should have lost that game. Like as bad as Auburn
I
is,
think they
like
won in like the
Missouri,
final minutes,
yeah, they should have lost that game.
and they played at Missouri. Like it's not like they were at Jordan
Yeah,
Hare.
I mean, if you look back, they should have lost to Auburn, barely beat them at home. They they beat the crap out of UMass the week before, but then they get throttled by Texas A&M.
They
They
struggled
win in
against
double.
Cal or Boston College, right?
Yeah, okay, and then they before Texas A&M they win double overtime against Vanderbilt, and then which Vanderbilt is a pretty solid team this year, so you take that or leave it. They barely beat Boston College, had to come back and win that game. I mean, they just haven't looked like what they were hyped up to be, which
Yeah,
they fell
especially
in the coaches poll. They fell, even though they won. They went from 19 to 21.
Yeah, and I mean they started kind of slower last year and they picked it up, but it just I don't know.
But at
They
this
they
point, like
haven't looked as good.
we're at the back half of the season now. Like there's 5 games left for most of these schools. Like
Yeah.
I think that they are what they are,
Yeah.
and they got Alabama at Alabama this week. Again, you don't know what you're going to get from these teams.
Yeah.
We thought that Alabama coming off of their loss of Vanderbilt was going to come in determined against South Carolina, but they just continue to be again Alabama. They're showing you this is who we are. Like
Yep.
They had that stellar win against Georgia, but other than that, like.
And honestly, they about blew that game against Georgia. I think it was they started out so hot, kind of like South Carolina did yesterday against Oklahoma, but couldn't sustain it. But I only wanted to discuss the Illinois-Michigan game because Illinois probably had the best uniforms of the year yesterday. Did you see them?
I didn't.
So, like when football started, they had the leather helmets.
Oh, yeah.
That's
what all those hand-painted?
I heard that. I don't think that's true.
They showed a video of the people like hand painting them.
I would hope. My thing is, I would hope they wouldn't. Well, just with graphics now, like you can just get a gigantic sticker and put that on the helmet because it's not like they're wearing it.
Helmets.
Levi said they were airbrushed. So,
that's what I mean. That they individually went.
So it's kind of like how Notre Dame. It's how Notre Dame does their helmets, or at least used to do their helmets.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my favorite uniform. I was actually on Fanatics today, seeing if they had like a T-shirt or something for it. Colorado, man, it's Coach Prime's quietly having a good season. Colorado's 5-2. Again, they haven't really played anybody, but I think with all the media attention not being on Colorado this year, they've kind of had a slow, good season. But again, they haven't played anybody. The two, they got manhandled by Nebraska and lost to Kansas State, but Coach Prime's slowly having a good season out there.
Yeah, they'll play Cincinnati, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas. I mean, they should finish with 8 or 9 wins.
Yeah, and then the last.
Yeah, that was dumb. Levi's comment, Travis Hunter's comments about Gentry, where he said something about his touches, like, dude. And he said something about his.
Can say that. Like, what
anybody
if
can say that? But here's the thing that doesn't make sense either. Is like every single rushing yard that Gentry has, he earns every single yard.
Yeah.
Like you as a wide receiver, you could just run a 50-yard route and catch a pass, and that's 50 yards, and all you did was catch it and get tackled. Like every yard that he's earning, he's actually carrying the football for those yards. Like,
and he's not the first two-way player to like being up for Heisman contention.
Yeah,
Charles Woodson.
Exactly. Like nobody, like that's awesome, but like someone said, like he's good at both positions, but he's not like elite at both positions.
Yeah, I think he's better on the defensive side of the ball compared to the offensive side of the ball.
Right. It's like you're good on offense, you're good on defense. Congrats that you play both ways.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're out there and they just have to account for you on every single snap on offense. And it's not like, okay, we cannot throw to that side of the field because he's over there.
Yeah.
Like
he's good at both. He's good at both positions, but he's not.
And he could be elite at one or the other if he just focused on it. But again, when you're out there the whole time, that was just and also I don't like players like actively like going on podcasts and stuff and trying to like talk themselves into the Heisman.
Yeah. It's one thing, like if you say, like, yes, I'm very confident in my ability. I know if I focused on one, like if I focused more on offense and didn't play defense, I think my numbers would be a lot or something like. But you can, the argument he made, if I had 95 catches, I would have. But it's like that's the case for every receiver. Like it's not like the only receiver. So I don't know. Like it's that, but that's the thing where you have these college athletes who are like you said, going on these podcasts that aren't like quote unquote media trained to avoid those types of comments because it creates nothing but negative press. And there's already, I wouldn't say negative press around Colorado, but it just seems to always find them with just comments that they make. And you rewind the tape a little bit when I think this is what Colorado State did in the preseason, but that quarterback made unnecessary comments towards Colorado, and it just wasn't necessary. No playing dinero. In just a few minutes we'll have our ticker up that'll have all of our socials on it. And so you can find us on that. On Facebook, if you just type in the search bar Two Guys Talking Sports, that's us. The logo you see in the top right corner, that's the logo you'll see on Facebook. And then on X/Twitter, we are at 2_guys_sports, and you'll see the same logo as the profile avatar as well. So thank you for the follows on those. And if you're new to the channel, like you are, No Playing Dinero, we cover high school sports in South Carolina, mostly Dillon and Marion County. And then we do South Carolina Clemson football mainly. And then we'll discuss, like we are this week, some of the stuff surrounding the national games. And last thing before we get into the last part of the show, USC, man, I think we're finding out week after week after week that Lincoln Riley is not a great coach. He bolted from Oklahoma to go to USC because I think at that time everybody knew that Texas and Oklahoma were probably joining the SEC, and he's going to the Pac-12 conference, which isn't as physically tough, and they blew up, hypothetically, that conference to join the Big Ten, and he's lost to now Maryland, which that is a complete joke where nobody goes to those games. They've lost to hold on. Let me pull up their schedule. Hold on. Come on. I know they lost to Minnesota, lost to Penn State, and who else did they lose to? Lost to Michigan. And so somehow they beat LSU, and then they beat Utah State and Wisconsin. And so I just think it's funny that, USC is now 3-4 on the season. They have a losing record, and all that money they pour into that or that football program and get mediocre results.
Yeah.
So that's all I had for the football landscape. Let's jump into, and we've
South Carolina got a vote in the AP.
There we go. And we've kind of talked about this already.
Oh, how about this real quick? Well, I just saw it. Army, Navy, both undefeated. That's going to be a dog of a game.
Somebody mentioned this. If the results stay the way they are and they play in the AAC, the American Conference, I think that's what it's called, and when they play their game, the game they always play, they could very well turn around and play each other again the next week in the conference championship game.
Right.
They very well could have a Service Academy could make
the playoffs,
the college football playoff
for sure. Yeah.
And that's because we already touched on the other topic I want to talk about, like who are the top teams in the country. Is there a true number one team? I guess if you have to choose one, it's probably going to be Oregon, in my opinion.
I don't think that there is a true number one.
Yeah.
But I think they got to put someone there. Oregon's probably looked the most consistent.
Yeah.
So I guess you would put them there, but I wouldn't go and like immediately bet I don't think either one of them run the triple option anymore.
Yeah, they don't. I think the ball. I know. I forgot the Navy coach's name, but he's not there
The Hawaiian
anymore.
guy's not there anymore. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they
and
switched
Army's
to
coach is gone.
they
They're more
both
traditional
switched.
teams
Yeah,
now.
to a spread.
Bro, just imagine
normal.
if we saw a team running the triple option in the college football playoffs, like people would lose their minds.
Yeah. The thing is like if you're not used to it though, and you have a team that's extremely good at it, it's hard to stop.
Yeah.
So
But Navy was never that good at it.
No,
The teams that were good at it were Paul Johnson's teams at Georgia Tech, and I think he was at Navy before then. But eventually that wore out real quickly.
Yeah.
And I was kind of talking about, or want to talk about, determining like outside of the automatic bids that you get. I really think this was the best year to start the 12-team playoff because it's really going to be anybody's chance to make and get these at-large bids. It's like what's going to determine, and one thing that has been brought up about Clemson is if they don't win the ACC championship and get one of those automatic bids, even if they do only have 2 losses, do they potentially get overlooked for maybe a 3-loss team where their team, like that team has lost to top opponents, but they also have big wins against bigger opponents than Clemson does. So it's, I think it's going to be a wild ride with this college football playoff selection committee this year.
Yeah, because you look at a team. I mean, obviously, I don't think it'll ever happen. It could, but you look at a team like South Carolina, and let's just say that the offense starts to click, and you have this championship level defense, and let's just say you win out.
Yeah.
So you beat Texas A&M, you beat Vanderbilt, who could potentially be 5-3 or whatever whenever you play, and they could end up being a 7 or 8 win team come towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Let's say you beat Texas A&M, you beat a very good Vanderbilt team, you beat Missouri, who will most likely be ranked, and then let's just say you beat Clemson, and Clemson does go on to win the ACC.
Yeah.
So your only losses are at Alabama, who was ranked in they were top 15 at the time.
I think they were 4th or 5th.
Okay, and then you have LSU that was 13, 16.
They're number 8 now and probably ranked higher.
So if you look at it, South Carolina comes in, and Ole Miss, depending on how they finish, that loss, obviously it doesn't look as good as the other two, but if you look at South Carolina at 9-3, I want to see too is like, do they determine like how is the team playing right now? Like if they are playing really good football to rattling off these wins, they just had a top 10 win to end the season. Clemson wins the ACC, so they're in. So you've got a team that's sitting there with 9-3. They should have been 11-1 if you just look at their losses and say, okay, only one of them was really bad. Is that a team that you put in?
Yeah, I mean, you rewind to last year where Florida State went undefeated, won the ACC championship. So to answer your question, there's the way you look at that when the season ends, your team definitely plays a factor because Florida State was undefeated, but they still didn't make the playoff because the committee knew they were not one of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah.
Because you add that human element in there and like people can see like, okay, Florida State had no business being in that football playoff last year, regardless of them going undefeated, winning the ACC championship. You could tell at that time they were not one of the 4 best teams in the country. Now, if they still had their quarterback, that's different. So definitely
let's just add this to it. Let's say South Carolina comes out in 2 weeks and they beat Texas A&M. Yeah. That win is on your record. And let's say Texas A&M from there on wins out and they are your SEC champion. You could potentially have a South Carolina team that finishes the year 9-3 with wins over both the SEC and the ACC champion. There's no way that you could leave them out at that point.
Yeah, because I mean Georgia still has to play Tennessee. Texas, hold on.
I mean, Texas A&M and LSU right now, if the season ended right now, they would be in the SEC championship game. Texas and LSU. Texas A&M and LSU. Yeah. Sorry. Texas A&M and LSU.
And then, hold on. I'm pulling up. So Texas, they have Vanderbilt this week. Vanderbilt's ranked 25th in the country. They have a bye week. Then they have Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. Florida's kind of turned it around a little bit the past couple weeks.
But I'm talking about Texas A&M.
I know, but I'm just saying, like,
right.
Texas, coming off their loss last night.
Yeah.
I mean, Georgia still has to play. Like I said, they still have Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, UMass, and they finish against, Georgia Tech. So, I mean, God, dude, there's no telling the way this season's going to go, and we have 5 games left, and there's still so much that can happen, and that's just in the SEC. It's unfortunately it's really going to, the majority of these automatic bids is going to boil down to either one other team from the ACC. If Vanderbilt beats Texas, oh my god, oh my god, I mean, never say never, obviously. But
it's in Vanderbilt. And that's a tough place to play now.
Yeah, I know, right? But these automatic bids are mostly going to come from the SEC and the Big Ten. Like I said, you can make an argument for Clemson or Miami as an at-large bid for sure. But let's look at, because Ohio State, Michigan still have to play each other. You have SMU. I keep forgetting about SMU.
But if you just take a team like Alabama, and let's just say Alabama also finishes 9-3. Let's just say they finish 9-3, South Carolina finishes 9-3. At the end of the season, if you take a look at it and say, okay, they were common opponents with Alabama coming off, with the win.
Yeah.
But if you look at how they're playing right now, I still think you would have to give the edge to South Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Oregon.
We got to find 2 more wins just to get bowl eligible.
Yeah. Let's get bowl eligible first. But like Oregon's remaining schedule, they've got Illinois next week, which it's at home in Oregon. I still think that's going to be a really good game. Then Oregon travels to Michigan. They've got Maryland, then they're at Wisconsin and then they finish at Washington. Let's look at Ohio State's remaining games. I know they still have to play Michigan. But they got Nebraska. They still have to play Penn State. They play Indiana, Michigan, and Northwestern. So there's just no telling. Like what we're talking about now could be completely different in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And like I said, I based off what I've seen this year, South Carolina can definitely get to 6 wins.
For sure.
Like I said, you just never know with Vanderbilt. Like I said, Vanderbilt did upset Kentucky, which Kentucky, they are just, I don't know what's happened to Kentucky. They had that big win against Ole Miss, and they just laid ducks against Vanderbilt. And who did they lose to last week? Oh, sorry. They lost to Vanderbilt last week and then lost to Florida last night. But still, you just never know with Vanderbilt because they barely beat Ball State. They won by 2 touchdowns. But again, you just never know. But Vanderbilt, I don't know. Like Vanderbilt as a team worries me, but going to play in Vanderbilt is not tough.
No.
So yeah, it's going to be.
So far, South Carolina has traveled well.
Yep. We've played our worst games.
The worst game that we played was at home.
Both, Old Dominion and Pavia, he's I will say this, the one good thing we have is our defense. And our defense is so fast and so athletic. I don't think Pavia's feet is really going to hurt us that much. But who knows?
What they always say is defense travels. That's the defense travels. And you saw that yesterday.
Yeah.
Like I said, if we can just get a little bit more consistent on offense, there's all of our remaining games are winnable games.
Agree, 100%. Yeah. So, well, that's all we got for today. We will not have unless Steven wants to. We will not have a show next Sunday because Carolina and Clemson are both on bye weeks. So the majority of our show is centered around those 2 teams. So we're going to take a break. We'll have our full high school episode recap on our Facebook page at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Is Caleb, comment if you're still in the chat. Steven, can you believe Caleb wasn't at that Dillon Marlboro County game Friday?
Yeah.
He's a fake fan.
He is. He's a fake Dillon fan.
The real Dillon fan showed up Friday. But yeah, so we'll have our high school recap episode. We'll record that tomorrow. We'll be up on our Facebook page Tuesday night. We'll be at PD Bethesda next Friday. And like I said, we won't be back next Sunday. So we will see y'all in a couple weeks. Steven, you got anything before we get out of here?
No, I just think the next few weeks are going to be wild because there's no
the
top
final
team.
5 weeks of college football is going to be absolutely insane.
Yeah. Normally by this time, like you pretty much know who the top 4 would have been going into the playoffs. But now, like obviously with the expansion, but then just how the season's been going, like there is no even with Oregon being ranked number 1. I mean, like they got Penn State at number 3 today.
Yeah, they're not a number 3 team.
No.
The 12-team playoff has highly is going to benefit Penn State because they are, in my opinion, they are not the number 3 team in the country. They shouldn't even, in my opinion, shouldn't even be inside the top 10. But that's just my opinion. So, but anyways, we'll get out of here. F1 is in Austin, Texas, so that race is probably starting now. So get home and watch
NFL
that.
football on. Nobody cares about F1 racing.
Take that back. Listen. I know the Cowboys are down.
We don't play today. So it's all joy around here.
Y'all will still lose the bye week.
Probably, yeah, because our GM won't make any moves to make us better.
Your GM/owner?
Yeah. He'd rather fire the radio host than to go and do something.
Don't you dare ask him tough questions. Yeah. Caleb, put in the comments. We're not beating the Guardians. Caleb, I've really questioned your Dillon fandom over not being at the game Friday. I was kind of disappointed in you. I kept looking for you because I remember last time I saw you there. So it's kind of disappointed. I won't be back there. We won't be back there during the regular season.
Fake fan. He's a fake Dillon fan.
He is. He was probably supporting some other high school. We have a lot to get into with our high school show because there's a lot that went on but in 2 games Friday night. So that'll be fun to recap. He got back late from Charleston. Okay. All right, Caleb. It is what it is. Levi, were you at the Dillon game?
Levi makes him work too hard, so you never can leave on time.
Oh, Caleb works for Levi?
Yeah, Caleb works for Levi, specifically for Levi.
Is Caleb Levi's errand boy? Like,
hey, pretty much.
Go get me a coffee and a candy bar.
Yeah.
if what's tough with the playoffs is especially in high school sports, it's like it's trying to determine what is the best game to go to.
Yeah.
And I mean, Dillon's, we'll get into this in our episode recording tomorrow because there's a lot I want to say.
Yeah.
Steve, look at this one. Anything daddy wants, daddy gets.
That's not. Hey,
gotta get that paycheck somehow.
Exactly. They do what Levi tells them to do.
Hey, gotta make that money in today's economy. Gotta get all the money you can. But yeah, we'll be back Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Maybe the way playoffs go, maybe we can do some live episode streams, Stephen, if we're able to kind of schedule that. I don't know. I think get it hot off the press the way some of these playoff games go might be worth getting. It would have been great to go live recapping that Dillon Marlboro County game Friday night. I should have done it.
Yeah, you had cold hands.
Oh, dude, my hands were freezing Friday night. So, but we'll see y'all Tuesday, 7 p.m. and we'll be back 2 weeks from Sunday.